Hello once again, everybody. This is Ethan Brown presenting my Milestone 2 presentation for my game Shackled Souls. To kick things off here, I want to take a look back at the roadmap I had set up in the last milestone, just to get an idea of where I'm at and where I'm going to be. So after this milestone, you'll see that we have combat depth pretty much completely finished, and the next step will be player choice. So with these two, the most amount of time for this half of Design Lab will be spent primarily on these. So I spent already quite a bit of time on combat depth. I'm gonna get into player choice for the majority of the time next. Sound design and then polish aren't going to take as much time. Those two combined will probably take as much time as combat depth or player choice. So with that, I'll go into the next slide, which will talk about the accomplishments I've made on the combat depth step of the roadmap. Firstly, we have a projectile script, so there's actually projectiles in the game now. So the projectile script handles every projectile and will handle every projectile that will be implemented in the game. Next thing, better enemy AI. A lot of that has to do with the implementation of projectiles. The enemies have interactive projectiles now, and just the way in which their states are handled are a lot more interactive or a lot more active in general. So we have better enemy AI now, and I've implemented a new boss. That'll be a Necromancer boss, so you'll see a clip of here on one of the future slides. I've implemented status effects and on-hit effects. Now, this took probably the most time out of everything because I had to refactor my code a little bit for how stats were handled for enemies and the player. And then I had to have a status effect handler implemented too, to affect how the stats are affected, essentially. So the on-hit effects kind of pulls from the status effects and just applies a status effect to something else whenever a hit is detected, if that thing has an on-hit effect with it. Something else that took a little bit of time. It's not necessarily pertinent to the aspect of combat depth per se, but it does give you that readability of what's happening during combat is HUD integration. And I also implemented a new title screen too, using that HUD. So on this next slide, I'm going to show off some of the projectiles in the game. So here on the left, you can see the beaver enemy. He sometimes kind of squats down and shoots out these projectiles out in a circle pattern. On the right side, you see the ghost. They teleport around and they go into an attack phase where they spawn these homing projectile skulls. And then in the middle, you can kind of see one of the three projectiles that the Necromancer boss has, where it spawns that projectile that kind of homes after you. You can also see a little glimpse of the HUD there as well. On to the next demonstration, we have the demonstration for status effects and the new title screen. So on the top left, you can see the title screen using the new assets that I got for the HUD. And on the right, on the top right, you can see that I'm activating a status effect on myself, which gives my attacks burning. So you see I activate the ability, which is called Piercing Inferno. It gives the player more attack speed and then gives it burning on hit. So I hit the boss once and you can kind of see it tick, 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 tick. It kind of ticks for 10% of the player's base damage there. Tick, 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 tick. And then on the bottom, you can kind of see where I've put the buffs. So the status effects, any buffs or debuffs will be shown down there. Whenever I activate the shift ability and then the spectral ability, you see the status effects pop up right there above the ability bar. So after what I have implemented during this stage of the roadmap, The next step, as you saw before, is going to be player choice. So I am going to be using the roadmap as a guide still. I think I'm making pretty decent progress on that. So player choice will be the next thing that I'm going to worry about. Primarily, this is going to be influenced by character selection, evolution decisions, ability evolutions. Those are the three primary things that I really am going to get knocked out. So I'm going to implement a couple more characters. I already have the ideas sketched out for those. Evolution decisions, that's going to come in the form of choosing how to evolve your abilities or certain passives that you can pick at the end of each stage. So ability evolutions, I kind of mentioned that just now. At the end of each stage, you will be offered a few evolutions you can choose from based on how you played the stage. And of these options, there will be ability evolutions you can choose to level up your abilities as the game goes on. Sacrifice room. This will give you soul relics, which kind of change how the flow of the game go. This is going to be handled by sacrificing some of your life force for items if you so choose, and each item will influence the game differently. For example, doubling your damage but having your movement speed, something like that. So this is kind of Shackled Soul's way to implement items in the form of soul relics. So one last look at the roadmap. We have combat depth finished. Next step is going to be player choice. These two are going to take the most time. Combat depth is out of the way. Player choice, this was a pretty big pillar for Shackled Souls because the players need to feel like that what they do, how they play the game, influences the outcome. So, and then the last two steps, sound design, then the polish and the score, those are probably going to take about the same amount of time as these other two have taken individually. With that, I am done with my presentation, and thank you all for watching.